Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hey everyone, and welcome to All Together, the Family Science Insights podcast, produced by Ellen Massell, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element, with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Dina Sargent. Let's get started.
Welcome back to All Together, the Family Science Insights podcast. We know that strong, healthy marriages are built on trust, communication, and emotional connection. But what about the physical aspect of that bond? How does mindfulness, the practice of being fully present in the moment, impact our sexual experiences and ultimately our relationships? To answer these questions, I'm joined by Associate Professor Chelom Leavitt, who has extensively studied healthy sexuality in committed relationships with a focus on how mindfulness during sex may be associated with positive outcomes for both men and women. I'm so stoked to learn more. So hi, Chelom. It's lovely to have you on the show. Welcome, and how are you doing today?
Thank you, Marie. I'm doing great. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Now, before we begin, could you tell us a bit about what your research entails and what you found out so far?
I've been a sex researcher for quite a while. And when I was introduced to mindfulness, it really wasn't in the context of sex. It was actually in the context of teachers and burnout that they were experiencing and how mindfulness kind of reduced anxiety and stress that they were feeling. And as I listened to that, I realized, wow, anxiety is one of the biggest deterrents to satisfying sex. And so it made a lot of sense to me at that moment that this is something that we needed to take into the context of sexual relationships and kind of research that. And that's what I set out to do, created a measure and then created a curriculum to, once we saw that we could measure the level of mindfulness people had in a sexual experience, the next step was really to teach, to see if we could teach. And what we found from our many intervention studies was that, yes, we can teach. And in fact, there were great outcomes for the couples who participated. And we had a number of different samples. We wanted to see if it worked in different contexts. And we're still kind of in that phase of our research, trying to explore different cultures, different types of couples that may benefit from this. And so far, what our research has shown is that it does help couples across the board. We have not found a study yet where we don't see positive outcomes from this curriculum.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. And what applications are you hoping your research to have?
Well, what's most exciting to me is to see that it really works in real people's lives, that people see a connection that maybe they had been struggling with beforehand. And then secondarily, and this is actually what I'm spending my sabbatical on right now, is teaching therapists. So other professionals who are dealing with couples and individuals, how can they integrate this kind of curriculum and the findings from these studies into their therapy with their own clients?
That's excellent. It's a great introduction to our topic for today as well. But before we get further into detail, I'd love to get to know you better. So this is Have You Met Chelom? And the first thing I'd like to know is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
I love to walk. I'm a walk or run. I do both depending on the day. Right now it's kind of hot, so if I don't get up early, I miss my opportunity. But I love gardening. I love embroidery. I like a lot of things. So, yeah.
Those are really they sound so fun. I've never tried embroidery, but it sounds really really fun. And I see videos online where people stitch stuff and like doing like little embroidery patterns all the time, and
Yeah,
it looks so interesting. And I would love to try it sometime.
you
Uh,
should.
how long have you been embroidering for?
Oh, I bet 30 years. I started uh, early in my marriage. I've been married 35 years. And so, yeah, it was just a nice way to do something productive.
No way, 30 years. I'm not even 30. I had no
Yeah.
idea that I thought you were like 35 maybe.
Oh, that's kind of
And
you.
then
No.
the more you keep talking about um how long you've been embroidering for and stuff like that, I was thinking like, wow, like she's really fine life for her age.
Yeah.
But that's a lesson in me to not judge by the book by its cover. Um well, apart from all of what you've shared with us, are there any movies, TV shows, or books that you've enjoyed recently?
Yes, I am constantly reading something. I try to pick from different genres. So I like some self-help. I like um, I like some fiction, but I mostly like history. So right now, I have been reading some books about the Knights Templar, and I just visited Roslin Chapel in Scotland, and that kind of piqued my interest. So I'm reading a few books on the knights.
That's amazing. I love that history's everywhere around us. I
Yeah,
personally
yeah,
love very niche historical facts about things that no one is really paying attention to, like random buildings around that have been around for a while, and really, really, really old ones that are considered heritage sites, but most of the population wouldn't know about them. I love learning about these things. So
yeah.
that's really interesting to me. And apart from history, what are some of the other genres apart from history and self help that you enjoy leaning into?
I really like philosophy. I've been reading a number of different psychologists. I'm reading a number of Carl Jung's books right now, The Undiscovered Self, and yeah, just a number of things.
Yeah,
So,
it sounds like you just love learning, which is great for a
yep,
professor.
I
Yeah,
really do. That's fun.
yeah.
My job is doing something that I love.
Yeah, that's really nice. People would kill to have that career purpose alignment. It's great. So
Yeah,
good job.
lucky
Not that you,
me. Lucky
yeah,
me.
not that you need that from me, but now, is there a role model or someone that you look up to in your life, either professionally or personally?
There's a number of role models, and I would kind of put them in categories of people who who saw beyond themselves. Um, I can think of both men and women who I would put in that category. Um, I'll start simple. Just my mom. I really learned a lot from her. She was not educated, and yet she had this burning desire to develop her talent as a pianist and later as an organist. And I grew up listening to her play these beautiful classic pieces and then share that with others. She was always seeing beyond herself, and I loved that.
Yeah, that's really sweet. What would you say are some of her most admirable traits?
My mom was creative. I think she struggled with, and I would say struggles. She's still alive. She struggles a little bit with some mental health issues.
Mhm,
And I saw her at a time when it really wasn't okay to
mhm,
get help.
mhm,
I saw her try to find ways to address it as best she could. And it was really instructive to me to see my mom's attitude and her struggles at the same time.
Yeah, that's really sweet. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really heartfelt and nice. I'm sure that if your mom listens to this podcast, she would be very touched. So now let's move on to your definition of family. What do you think a family is?
Yeah, that's we have kind of changed, haven't we, over the decades, how we define family. And I would say that family is generally a group of people, a couple who are committed to one another and working for the best interest of the other. And that often takes an awful lot of work and sacrifice, whether it's a mother for her children, or spouses, or people who have just committed in another way. I think that that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Now, with that in mind, let's move on to defining sexual mindfulness and what it means in marital intimacy as well as families. Let's start off with the basics. What is the role of sex in marital intimacy? What effect does it have on families?
Yeah, well, sex is a pretty powerful activity. Certainly, we can certainly talk about that it can create a child, but I think it goes far beyond that, right? And it really is a mechanism for a couple to strengthen their relationship. From my research, from other people's research, we know that as we experience arousal during sex, we have different hormones that increase in our body. Most especially, the one that I really focus on is oxytocin. Oxytocin kind of floods our brain as arousal increases. And oxytocin is often known as the cuddle or the attachment hormone. And so having this flood of oxytocin during sex creates this sense of connection, of belonging. And it's a really important part of creating this stable, strong, committed relationship with another person. Anyone who has tried to create a successful marriage will know that some days are not easy. Some days we kind of don't like each other. And maybe just the ups and downs, or that we feel distant or exhausted. And so sex is a really powerful way for us to reconnect in a pretty quick and effective manner. And so it's a lovely part of a committed relationship, that we can overcome the distance and the fatigue of the relationship, maybe even misunderstandings and a little bit of conflict. Sex plays a lot of roles for people. Sometimes it's something we do just for fun, but sometimes it's something we do to reconnect and to really come back together.
Yeah. And it, like, on first glance, it seems like quite a far stretch to link sex in a marital relationship to how a family functions or how a family feels at any given point in time. But when you link each piece together, it does make sense. When your marital relationship feels stronger and you feel more connected, it rubs off on your family as well. But is there anything in your findings at all from your research that showed this in particular, that it does have a positive impact on families?
Yeah, in fact, some of my research was looking at couples who were more mindful in general, like just in their regular life, but who were also more sexually mindful during the transition to parenthood. And couples who had higher levels of both kinds of mindfulness had an easier transition to becoming a parent for the first time. And they bonded with that baby more. They reported higher parental efficacy, right? So they were enjoying being parents. They felt like they were doing a pretty good job. and they were connecting with this baby at the time. And no one has looked at that beyond infancy, but I'm pretty sure that that's a good indicator that this would continue if we were, really taking care of that sexual relationship as well as the overall tone of the marriage in general.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Now, how would you define sexual mindfulness when we're talking about being mindful? What is it we're referring to here?
Yeah, so being mindful is typically defined as being aware in the present moment and not being judgmental, instead being curious. Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? What am I feeling, right? All of those sorts of things. So when we're talking about sexual mindfulness, we're taking those same sorts of qualities and applying it to sex. Now, the reason that we look at them differently is that most people, when they're engaging in sex, have a little heightened anxiety, whether it's that they feel a little nervous about, being naked in front of their partner or performing well. But it can also just be from a sense of pleasure, right? That I feel a little heightened anxiety because this is truthfully enjoyable. And maybe we don't want it to end, or maybe it's maybe too much emotion for us at the time. But for whatever reason, we know people do experience heightened anxiety in general. And so mindfulness helps us kind of tone that down and relax, pay attention to your breath, pay attention to how it feels to be next to your partner, to be experiencing the sensation of arousal, and to be more intentional in how you're thinking about this experience. Instead of being judgmental and maybe criticizing, oh, I have a little belly fat, or whatever it is that we might start condemning, instead we're curious, where we think, why would I be concerned about this with the person that I love? I'm committed to this person. This is an enjoyable experience. So maybe digging deeper and kind of understanding what is happening in the sexual relationship without going to the place of judgment or criticism.
Right. And what sort of, how are we able to get to that point? I imagine that going from experiencing that heightened anxiety like we usually do to being mindful during sex, or practicing mindfulness during sex, isn't really an overnight thing. So what are some of the first steps that we have to do?
That's a great question. And it's going to be different for everybody, but there are some steps that we suggest. And the first is to just start being mindful in your own personal life, right? Take 2 or 3 minutes and just sit with yourself, right? Pay attention to your breath. Kind of let go of whatever crazy thoughts and busyness is in your head. Just try to let it go and give your mind a rest. And we know the more we practice that, the easier it becomes. It's like a muscle that hasn't been used. And very few of us are taught in our cultures or in our families to slow down and just be still, just be quiet for a moment. And there is this power in stillness. And so what I tell people is try to do this for a couple minutes a day. And as soon as you can work up to about 10 continuous minutes, 10 minutes we know is a really effective dose of mindfulness. The research shows this. When people can meditate about 10 minutes a day, they start to see a shift in their thinking. They become less judgmental. They become more compassionate, self-compassionate, and less judgmental. And so it's something about just being aware of how I'm connected to my friends, my colleagues, the earth, the moment. And it's slowing down and allowing myself to feel gentle towards myself. It starts to have a really big effect. Then we can start applying it to sex, slowing down sex, allowing sex to be a moment-to-moment experience of how does it feel to be with my partner? What brought us to this moment where we can share our bodies, our emotions, our thoughts, and that we can do it non-judgmentally, with this love and compassion.
Yeah. And according to your research, like we've talked about before, men and women have different experiences in benefiting from sexual mindfulness. So, what are some of these differences?
Yeah, well, both men and women benefit, but women benefit more. And here's why. Women tend to be already pretty other focused or focused on their partner, whereas men are a little more self-focused. And it serves men really well in sex because they're aware of their arousal, they're aware of what it is they're feeling, and they can identify it and move through arousal phases much more effectively than women can. Women start kind of second guessing, am I feeling enough arousal? Am I pleasing my partner? And they get hung up on some of these questions that start rattling around in their brain. There's some wonderful research that shows that women have a body-mind disconnect where they may actually be feeling arousal, but be cognitively unaware of it because their mind is so busy thinking of, oh, are my children are they still sleeping? Is my husband okay? Is he enjoying this? Did I turn off the laundry? Whatever it is, they're all over the place, right? And so women sometimes need to be able to just focus on the moment, give themselves permission. This is a time where I need to tune into my body. I need to be present right here in this experience. And so what we see is that this training seems to really benefit women. In some of my research, women who were more sexually mindful also reported having more consistent orgasms, enjoying sex more, and enjoying their relationship more. Men also had an increase in all these things, but it wasn't quite as dramatic as women's.
That's really interesting. And I love that, whatever that you mentioned about women kind of not being able to enjoy the moment because they're thinking too much about if the laundry's on, if the kids are okay. It's such a stereotype with like mothers, right? And
Yeah.
it's so funny that that is proven in research that does happen.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to practicing mindfulness myself and hopefully being able to get to a point where I have a bit more connection between my mind and body. Personally, it sounds like a good venture for most women to have because we do need a little bit of relaxation and we
Yes.
so often don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
But we talked a little bit about how this can have a positive outcome for parents and families. Could you walk us through that a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, what's really nice is that some of we did both quantitative and qualitative research on some of these studies. So I have some thoughts going in my mind about comments that people made after they learned how to be more sexually mindful. And some things that people would say were that I thought we were close. We have a good relationship, but this just helped us understand how much deeper our connection can be. And we both were able to kind of relax and be more present. And a number of them mentioned how that spilled over to their children, how when their children are kind of demanding their time, they could just slow down and be present and connected with their children as well, taking those same skills that they learned to apply first of all, to slow down yourself, slow down your mind, make that mind-body connection, and then do that with your partner. Then, they can also apply that in other relationships, most especially in this context with their children.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really, really great.
it's really fun. I mean, I love that. I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist monk, said the best gift we can give our loved ones is our presence, right? Really just be there with them for whatever few moments they need you to be there.
Yeah, for sure. It's also recognizing that whatever else that you do have on, and this is a very general statement, obviously, but whatever else that you do have on at the moment, is it going to fall apart if you do give your loved one that few minutes of your time that they will definitely feel a lot better from
Right.
like after receiving. And if you don't give this person your time, especially when it comes to children, right, they're very impressionable ages, where if you dismiss them when they're really little for over several occasions, they will kind of not really incorporate, what was the word, they will kind of like in what's the word, do you know what the word is?
They learn, I guess, that we
they'll
just
learn.
aren't. Yeah.
They'll absorb that
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
into their lives because they're so young. So
Right. And truthfully, most of us aren't, it's not, what we're doing isn't critical to saving the world. It's probably that we're on social media or, watching our favorite show. And so, like you said, just being able to take that moment and give it to them, our full attention, makes the world of difference to them in how they feel about themselves.
yeah. Or even something as like, okay, if you do feel like you need to prioritize work or some other task, and you can only really give 5 minutes of your time, just letting the child know, like, oh, I really have something important, I can give this much time to you, I will give this much time to you first, but I do have to attend to something else. Even that, like, kind of communication and just being mindful about how your child is actually a little human feeling all these things can make all the difference. So
Great
that's
strategy.
really, yeah. So I love hearing about what sexual mindfulness does, and it's actually pretty life altering. Not really I don't know if that this classifies as life altering, but it's definitely,
it's funny how many of my couples actually say that it is life altering, and it's just a small tweak. It's not like enormous, but this small tweak leads to some pretty big changes in your life.
No, yeah, for sure. I felt like I was maybe being a bit over dramatic by saying that
I
it's
don't think
life altering, but I'm glad that I got some confirmation from people who've actually tried it. Now let's talk about some practices and habits that people who hope to practice sexual mindfulness can do. What are some habits that would be useful in supporting someone's journey to sexual mindfulness?
Yeah, I love this. I love that you asked this question. In addition to just being mindful yourself in your daily life, maybe taking the 10 minutes to meditate, when you come together as a couple, it's really important to pay attention to how you feel in each other's presence, and slow down, be more intentional about how you come together. I like to tell my couples, that when you come back together, whether it's from school or work or whatever has taken you apart from each other, when you come together, do what I call a mindful hug. And that means you just loosely embrace each other for 5 to 10 minutes. And that's a long time to hug. Most of us give quick little 10-second hugs. And I ask people to stay in that embrace for 5 to 10 minutes. And what that does is it helps you kind of reconnect and see if there's anything that is creating distance in your relationship. I always tell the story the first time I did this activity with my husband. I noticed he was leaning on me, and it kind of was like bothering me. And so I would give a little shoulder shrug and kind of push back on him. And we went through this little dance for, the 5 to 10 minutes. And afterwards, you do something called heads together, and you just put your foreheads together and kind of quietly talk with each other about, this is what I felt during that hug, right? We're not talking during the hug. And then you have this debrief afterward. And that one quick activity, in my experience, really revealed a number of things that my husband and I needed to be working on. We needed to address. There was a little bit of tension that we were experiencing. And it's so interesting. Whenever I give this activity, this assignment for the couples to go and practice at home, they come back and they say, we learned so much from that one activity. So that's one thing I would mention.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds like one of those exercises or activities where you don't know how it really feels until you go through it or you experience it yourself.
Yeah.
I'm really keen to try it and
try it. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And are there any challenges at all when doing this practice? Are there moments where you both are feeling like, oh, I don't really want to do this right now, or I literally need to put my back down, take my coat off. I can't, yeah. Are there any challenges when it comes to doing this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say, you can put your bag down and take your coat off. Get ready for this 5 to 10 minute hug. Go to the bathroom or get a drink of water, whatever.
Okay,
you
good
need.
to know. I was thinking the moment I walk through the door, I've got to, with my shoes on the doormat, I've got to stand there for 5 to 10 minutes. Good to know that I don't need to do that.
No,
but
you
otherwise...
can relax a little. Yeah, so there are definitely some challenges, and it's really important to be prepared for the challenges, which are generally that you start feeling, well, first of all, it creates a little safety. And so oftentimes when our bodies feel safety in a relationship, emotions rise to the surface. And so for a lot of people, this brings up emotions that have maybe been tamped down for a while or ignored. And it might be an unresolved hurt or something that we just haven't taken the time to, take apart and really understand. Or it may be a feeling of joy that I am so blessed that I am in this relationship. And so what a lot of couples report is that they feel these heightened emotions that are really connecting with the depths of who they are and what they feel and what is important to them. And for some people, that's very uncomfortable to get that emotional. And for some people, they love it, they embrace it. And usually, this can fall along gender lines where men are a little less comfortable with the emotional depth that we're getting to, and women are leaning into it. But it could be, vice versa. But the important thing is to recognize that both partners are giving everything they have. We're being authentic. We're moving step by step, right? We can't rush this process. And so if someone starts to feel a little uncomfortable with the emotions that they're tapping into, give them a little space to kind of process that and say, well, let's come back to it later, right? We don't want to ignore it, right? We don't want to start tamping them down again. We want to circle back around once they've had some time to digest it.
Yeah, that's true. I do also notice that most of my conversations with my partner, in my relationship at least, most of the moments where I do bring up like, oh, I've been feeling this certain way and I have to talk about it, most of them do come after I feel some sense of safety, after I feel like, okay, now's the right time to talk about it. And in practicing this activity, it does create that environment for it. It's the
Yeah.
perfect environment to be able to talk about it. And if you do it every time you see them, it allows you to be able to bring up sudden issues or certain areas of tension a little
Yes.
bit more, I guess, frequently. And in that way, it kind of allows any issues to be resolved pretty quickly, and then
Yeah.
tension won't have to build or
Yeah.
won't have to like linger around for long.
It really keeps it. Yeah, I agree with you. It really keeps the channels clear
Yeah.
within your own relationship. And I'll tell you this, it may also bring up hurts that have nothing to do with your partner, right?
Mhm.
It could be something that I experienced as a child when maybe I was neglected or something really traumatic happened. And that also provides this safe space where I can now process this
Mhm.
with a person who cares about me.
Yeah, I love that activity. Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah,
that.
you're so welcome.
Yeah. It's been such a pleasure talking to you and getting to know more about what sexual mindfulness can do for relationships and for families alike. I feel like I've learned so much that I didn't expect to learn at all. So now that we have gotten all of that out of the way and we learned more about sexual mindfulness, let's move on to the open mic section. This is your chance to talk about anything that you are passionate about that doesn't have to be related to the topic. So the floor is yours completely. Please take it away.
Okay. I am going to talk about something that's related, just because I think that this is so important to your sexual relationships, and that is your ability to be emotionally vulnerable with your partner. We often talk about sex in pretty mechanical ways, in sex ed as we're learning it in high school or junior high. It's really just about the mechanics of sex.
Mhm.
Very rarely do parents even talk about the emotions that come
Mhm.
with sex. And truthfully, we know I was making a diagram of what sexual wholeness would be, right? What does sex entail? And certainly there's that physical, but I would say the bigger portion of it is the emotional.
Mhm.
How do I connect with this person emotionally? Do I feel safe? Do I feel like I can tell you my dreams, my disappointments? And that is what makes sex so meaningful, so rich and powerful, is
Mhm.
when we can really feel like we are sharing our everything with this person, not just our body, but everything we think and feel, and they can do the same, right? That we're receiving it from them as
Mhm.
well. And that's a really beautiful thing. I love, there's one of my favorite writers, and he's a relationship guy. He said, as we undress emotionally, the natural outcropping of that is to undress physically, right? We want to share ourselves with this person who loves all of us.
Mhm.
And so I think that's such a beautiful way for us to understand sex, explain it to our kids, that, sex is not something that we just are should be so casual about, that sometimes we know from the research, if children are feeling kind of pressured, they may get into situations that then are less than healthy for them. And
Mhm.
so as we teach our kids about it in this positive, healthy, happy way, that sex is meaningful, kids are more intentional about how they use their own bodies and engage with their own sexuality.
Yeah, I do have to agree there. I feel like for for a long time in the media, sex is often portrayed as something that can be so casual and purely physical. But the beautiful part about sex is that when there is an emotional element to it, and you're not just having sex, you're I don't want to sound I don't want
You're
to sound
making
I don't
love.
want to
Yeah.
sound what yeah, I don't want to sound like what the younger people would call cringe, but you are making love. You genuinely
Yeah.
are. Like you're going like, I love this person so much. This person's contributed so much to my life, and I just want to be intertwined with them. And that
Yeah.
is one of the most beautiful parts about sex. And
Yeah.
um even from the research, it shows like when you are more emotionally open with someone, the sex often is better because your anxiety is reduced. And whatever you have mentioned as well, about how when anxiety is not heightened, the sex is better. And when you're in that
Right.
moment, it's not something that you can't necessarily, well, not across the board, at least do it with someone that you're just seeing casually or you've only seen one time. Like you can do it to a certain extent, but
Yeah.
chances
I mean,
are,
the
yeah,
research is really clear about that
yeah.
we know that can actually be damaging. And so, yeah, as we're talking with young people, our children, if you really want to give them the straight scoop, you'll talk about the research that says, yeah, you're going to have a better experience if there is a healthy relationship there.
I love that. I'm just imagining like a 10-year-old child and pulling up all the publications, all of this scholarly journals. Like, look, here's
Yeah,
all the research. I
right
can,
there.
yeah, I can summarize it for you in bullet points. It's
Yeah.
all that, but like, the proof is in the pudding. Read
Yeah.
all of this
Yeah. My
scholarly
kids laugh at
articles.
me because I absolutely bring up the research. We're eating dinner and I'm like, hey, I just read this really cool article about sex today. And we have some pretty fun conversations.
I love that. But it's good though. It's really good
So
because
good.
you're normalizing reading directly from the source with your kids, which
Yeah.
is so necessary because misinformation is teeming
Yeah.
in our digital world. So
Yeah.
being able to go straight to the source, being able to have that literacy, it's great for your kids.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for sharing all of that
You're
with us and
so
for
welcome.
joining us today, Chelom. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
They can go to my website, which is just shalomlevitt.com. And I have a lot on my research. I also blog for Psychology Today. So that's another source they could go to. If they're really interested in my research, Google Scholar, just look up Chelom Levitt.
All right, amazing. We'll link all of those in the show notes. Thank you everyone for tuning in to Altogether, the Family Science Insights podcast, and we will catch you in the next episode.
You've been listening to Altogether, the Family Science Insights podcast, produced by the Family Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so that we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at fa.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Dina Sargent. Thanks for tuning in.